City of Salem, the City Council Committee on Administration of Finance, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, met in the Council Chamber on May 27, 2025 at 6 p.m. for the purpose of discussing the matters of the fiscal year 26 operating budget meetings and capital improvement plans for the Salem Public Schools. Notice of this meeting was posted on May 8th, 2025 at 2:39 p.m. In attendance tonight, we have from the Administration and Finance Committee, Councilor Stott, Councilor Harvey, and Councilor Watson-Felt. Also joining us tonight from the Committee of the Whole, we have Councilor Masillo, Councilor Cohen, and Councilor Jerslow. We also have in attendance tonight, we have Superintendent of Schools, Drs. Reich, Elizabeth Pauley, Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operation, Anna Friedman, our Finance Director, Mayor Pangalo, and Chief of Staff, Lisa Peterson. And welcome, everyone. The Administration and Finance Budget Committee hearings will run through mid-June, and the agendas are posted on the city calendar, which include a link to the fiscal year 2026 proposed budget, almost 700 pages, and other financial information, including the fiscal year 2026 budget in brief, which is always really helpful. It's an overview of budget priorities, timelines, breakdown of revenue sources, and where your money goes. These budget hearings are a great opportunity to learn about what each of our departments are doing and their vision for their department moving forward. And if any of the public has any questions in regards to the budget hearings, please feel free to email me at amerkel@salem.com. And as always, I want to thank Anna Friedman, our Finance Director, and the city's finance team for all their hard work on the proposed budget and their fiscally responsible leadership. And for reference, the budget overview for the schools is in the front section of the budget book, the larger tab 4. And we're going to start with a presentation tonight, and we will be going through the budget first. And after we vote on the budget, we will discuss the CIPs, looking at the 5-year capital plan, all funds. Okay. And welcome, everyone. Thank you.
All set?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. So glad that we could contribute to the 700 pages that you have. Oh, okay. All right. Great. And I'd also, just before I start, I want to put a plug in for the art show at Old Town Hall, which I just had a chance to see. It's pretty awesome. I'm very jealous of the talents that our young people have and the work our teachers have to let them shine. But if you get a chance to walk through, it's very, very impressive. All the schools are represented, and it's part of this festival that we have. We're representing student voice, identity, and making sure they have a chance to showcase their many talents. So I'll just put a plug in. Wouldn't be appropriate if I didn't. Now to less fun thing, which is presenting the budget for the upcoming school year. I do want to just, I have a couple of slides I'll share, and then Elizabeth will go into some more of the details. This is a version of what we shared with the school committee, a little more, less detailed, but I think hits on the most important aspects of our proposal. So this has been a challenging budget year for the school district. It is for many school districts in Massachusetts. All you have to do is pick up the paper to see that. And we entered this year knowing that it would be challenging because we had settled a new contract with our educators, which we feel very, very good about. We have a much more competitive salary schedule, and our teachers deserve to be paid more competitively. But in doing so, we knew that that's the biggest part of our, obviously staffing is the biggest part of our budget, and we knew that there would be challenges ahead given some of the fiscal constraints that you are aware of as a city and what we see across the state and across the country. But we entered with a couple of principles. One, we were going to allocate resources as equitably as we could, depending on where the needs were in the district. We always want to align to our strategic priorities and values, which I'll talk about in a moment, and that we were going to listen to what stakeholders had to say. And unfortunately, this year we couldn't ask them what they would add to the budget, but we asked for their opinions about what we had to keep, and if with finite resources, what was most important to you. And then we also listened very heavily on our school leaders. and educators who live in the schools every day and who have a much better sense of what is working and not working in their schools, so that we could hear from them what they needed the most for their schools. Just on the next slide, these are our core values. These haven't changed. We've had these for the last 5 years. They really define who we are and what we do. We try to create schools of belonging where everybody feels like they have a place in our schools, and that empathy and respect are important aspects of the relationships we try to build. Equity, as I mentioned before, we look at it as making sure that everybody has a voice, is empowered and engaged in our schools. And then opportunity. This is critical that our young people have the opportunities to be competitive in the state of Massachusetts, across the country. We want them to have as individualized experience as possible, and where they have multiple choices upon their graduation. As we enter graduation season, we want to make sure that our students have choices of either going into college, career, or both after they leave our schools. Our next slide here is our strategic priorities. I mentioned our strategic plan. We're about to enter the final year of a 3-year plan. This plan has been a real guide for us. It's been the North Star for the district over the last 3 years. Everything we do, we make sure is tied to this plan. I think you've seen copies. I've presented it to you before. Our priorities, we're an academic institution, so learning is number one. Our second is around empowering our educators, making sure that it's a place that people want to work, grow, and stay. The third is around creating a culture welcoming and supportive school community, which is more important than ever, to create those kinds of communities where everyone feels like they have a place. And then finally, to have a strong foundation where we're using our resources as thoughtfully as possible. We're creating strong systems that support the work of the rest of the school district. Next slide. So an overview of the budget. So our proposal is for $78,173,061. It is an increase from the year before of 4.8%. What's different for us, obviously, is that this year there's a significant gap. The gap was $4.9 million that we were faced with for a variety of reasons. And I touched upon, obviously, the salary increases that, again, we don't make any apologies for. It was necessary. We were losing people because we weren't being competitive, and retention is really important to us and to the city of Salem. All the federal funding for pandemic recovery had expired. We had to spend it by the end of last summer. And then, as you know, expenses are rising everywhere. So for us, that's some of our out-of-district tuition. That's tuition for special education students who receive services that we can't provide in the Salem Public Schools. Transportation costs have gone way up for us, both for in-district, but also homeless transportation. With the increase in homeless students in the district, that those numbers have gone up. And then utilities costs have increased, which Elizabeth will talk more about. And then the money we get from the state, which Anna is as well-versed as anybody in explaining it, the burden continues to fall more on Salem, and our Chapter 70 which is the mechanism that funds public schools, has not kept up with inflation. And so I think the city is doing their part, but it's not, more and more of the burden is falling on the city rather than the state. And what we're getting from the state isn't going to cut what we need to effectively run a school district. And so that's why we have the gap that we were faced with. We made reductions, and Elizabeth will talk, there were 57 position reductions in this budget, which was very difficult, but we tried very hard to look at existing vacancies, retirements, and so in the end, it didn't affect as many people. And Elizabeth will talk more about that. But we tried to make sure that we were able to retain as many good people in good standing, and that we were the roles we were contracting were ones that were vacant, or like I said, were no longer needed in the district. So we tried to make those decisions across all schools, across all departments, so that the pain of that of the reductions wasn't felt by one place more than others. And we think it's never easy to do, and there's never a good way to do it. No good choices here, but we think we were as strategic as we possibly could in making these decisions. Next slide here. Of course, in order to do that, we really needed to listen to what stakeholders had to say. We did host 2 public forums. One was in person, one was on Zoom. We did have a staff forum, which was educators only, and it's good to get educators' perspective. They had a lot to share. That was the most well-attended forum we had. We're required by law to have a budget hearing, which we did on April 14th. We did have quite a few people at the budget hearing, not to be unexpected when there was so much change in the budget. So we heard from, not just me, but the school committee heard from a lot of different folks. And we did make adjustments to the budget based on the input that we had received. I have a lot of advisory groups that are existing, so it's easy to bring this information to them and get their input. I meet with teachers once a month, which is representative from every school. The students, who are always my favorite group because they'll just tell it exactly like it is, so talk to them about the things that they wanted to cut. The cell phone pouches was their big thing. They don't like even though that's just a fraction of the budget, they don't like that they can't use their cell phones at school. And then we have a parent advisory group as well that we meet with on a monthly basis. We also have a LPAC, which is a parent group of multilingual learners, parents of multilingual learners that meets, I believe, quarterly. And then we have a special education parent advisory group that also meets on a regular basis, and we consulted with all of them. Of course, the unions were heavily involved. They didn't obviously like necessarily that we were reducing positions, but they were very helpful in giving us their perspective and their thoughts along the way. And so even before we had shared this with the public, we had consulted with our different unions. We have a finance subcommittee meeting, which is led by school committee member Manning, who unfortunately was unable to be here today, but she leads the finance subcommittee of the school committee. And then our principals, our school leaders, loom very large. We met with all of them multiple times to get their perspective on the reductions. We asked every school to take some level of reductions dependent on their size of their contributions to the overall budget, and so their perspectives were useful. Again, they're the ones who live in their school. They know where there's flexibility or not. And then we have an executive team for the Salem Public Schools that also consulted very much. I got a lot more feedback than I have in my last 5 years at this email, SPS budget, from the public, families, staff, and everything I received I shared with the school committee before they made their final decisions on the budget. So just in hearing all that, some of the strategic decisions that we made was based on what we heard is we wanted to commit to maintaining the most high interest student programs where we got the most feedback. We heard loud and clear, do not touch the pre-kindergarten programs in the Salem Public Schools. We get great feedback from parents about those programs, and I think staff is starting to see the benefits of starting kids earlier in strong programs. We're also part of a consortium with other community providers. We receive funding from the state for a collaborative, so we invest in some of the community partners as well, and that model has worked very well for us. Early college is something we hear a lot. We have more and more students who are taking college classes in high school. That's an unbelievable opportunity for students to get credits in high school, and some can even earn 2 years worth of credits before they graduate. And then our CTE programs. I think we've spoken a lot about the rise of those programs and the pathways and the opportunities that has provided students. We tried as hard as we could to prioritize student-focused positions, although every position in the district has an impact on students, almost everything, especially in the way we talk about, when we talk about educators, we talk about everyone, whether you're a bus driver, whether you work in food services, whether you work as a paraprofessional, everybody has an impact on students. But we try to keep it as far from the classroom as we could. We did preserve class size. We have very strong class sizes in Salem, not relative to private schools, but relative to other public schools. And We kept our investment. We heard loud and clear from teachers and parents about that. We wanted to continue to invest in educators in this budget, which we did because our salary commitments are here. We have a new contract, as I said, and we felt strongly that we had to honor what we agreed to in the contract. The school committee felt strongly that they did not want to institute fees for any activities, whether that be sports, whether that be transportation, whether that be technology. They felt strongly that that was one of the things that made Salem unique. There's a lot of need, and in the end, they chose not, that wasn't going to close a $5 million budget to start raising fees, charging for pre-K, for instance. Those are things that I think make us a special district, and we heard loud and clear from the school committee that that's not something they wanted to do. We obviously have a transition from Saltonstall Middle School to Collins next year. That's a priority in this budget. We maintain teachers coming over from the other school, from Saltonstall to Collins, so we have about 140 students scheduled to move, and that the budget provides for that. This budget does expand digital library services, which was part of a, was it a 2-year plan to have librarians, but media specialists in all the libraries of Salem. The only school that hasn't transitioned yet is Carleton. That's the final stage, but everybody else in this, after this budget hopefully gets passed, will have digital library or media specialists in libraries, because we have had, other than the high school and Collins, we've had paraprofessionals. So this allows for their students, especially around the need for digital literacy, the importance of understanding digital citizenship. We felt that that was important. There is money in this budget to increase stipends for athletic coaches. This has been an ongoing challenge that our coaches are paid less. They have not historically been part of the teacher contract, so this does include stipends for them. And then we feel strongly that given the rise in the number of multilingual learners and special education students, that we continue to maintain reasonable caseloads for staff who work with English language learners and special education students. I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth to give us some more of the dollar details.
Does this microphone work?
Hit the button.
Yeah.
Green light should turn on. Or you can take Steve's.
This is a very fancy, loud one here, so we'll just
I'll
go
take
this
the
one.
fancy loud one.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Well, good evening, and my first slide is our budget process, which will be very familiar to this group, but just to reset, as we think about the budget as a year-long, really, process, it starts for us in October when our official enrollment is set by the Department of Education. So our funding from the state depends on how many students we have and who they are. There's a formula, it's called Chapter 70, and that is based on our enrollment as of October 1. In November, we're able, happily, since we have collective bargaining agreements in place, we're able to project out our salaries for the coming year, and then in December, we're able to take those two things, the number of students and what we think our personnel costs will be, and begin working with schools and departments to see how this year is going and also what the priorities will be for next year. We begin in earnest in January when we have mid-year step backs, which are reflection moments about where we really need to lean in the coming year with the principals and department heads, and then we begin gathering community input. So as the superintendent mentioned, we have community forums with the public, with our staff, with advisory boards, et cetera. In March and April, we work in earnest with the school committee's finance subcommittee to develop a budget proposal. At that time, we're also working very closely with City Hall and the finance office to think about what might be possible based on what our known expenses are and what the city's budget is beginning to look like. Our official presentation to the school committee happens in April. We are required by law to have a budget hearing, so we had a formal budget hearing on April 14th, and then the school committee voted at the end of April on the budget that is included in your budget book. So that brings us to today and the conversation with you, and then the vote that you will take, which I believe is on June 12th. But as you can see, and what I hope you take away from this, is that we try to build a very inclusive process where lots of taxpayers, parents, voters, all of the constituencies in Salem have the opportunity to really look closely at what we're proposing for next year. So just to reiterate, the recommended by the school committee budget is $78,173,061. This is a 4.8% increase over the current fiscal year, FY25. FY25 was actually 4.8% above FY24, and that increase and this increase is a historic increase for the Salem Public Schools. That is a very generous increase and higher than what has been the average over the last decade. So thank you for the increase from 24 to 25 and hopefully for the increase from 25 to 26. It is a complicated budget, as the superintendent mentioned. First, we really did look for efficiencies. So if there was a way that we could reduce our costs, and I'll talk more about that in a moment, but one thing we've done this year to reduce our costs is we've invested over $1 million in making our buildings more energy efficient. So we think we can become more efficient by replacing our light bulbs, by weatherizing our buildings, and trying to reduce electricity costs. We looked at staffing to see if we had the right roles based on our student needs. Was there a job or two that could be combined? As part of the process, we really looked at every single part of our budget to see where we could become more efficient. We also propose to use recurring revenue to reduce our expenses. So every year, we get a reimbursement from the state called Circuit Breaker. It reimburses us for special education costs above a certain threshold. We have built that into our budget, that we'll get the Circuit Breaker reimbursement. So the numbers we bring to you for our special education costs actually already account for recurring revenue. We also receive rent, for example, from the Boys and Girls Club at Collins Middle School. So we think about how we can use that for our facilities work. So we looked at all recurring revenue. We receive school choice revenue annually for students who opt into the Salem Public Schools. So that is baked into our assumptions about how to balance this budget. We are reducing or recommending reducing by 57 positions. About 20 of those are people who are retiring or planning to leave. We knew that when we went into it. Another 15 are people who will be moving to different roles in the district. So their position might be eliminated, but they're going to take either a different position at their school or in the district. So it isn't actually 57 people who are leaving as a result of the budget that we're bringing to you this evening. We do also have non-personnel reductions to expense budgets. We have cut where we can to things like contracted services, assuming that we will hire fewer outside consultants next year. We will live without things that we haven't used or don't need. So, for example, in IT, we've canceled some of our subscriptions for curricular resources that weren't being used. So we did look at cutting both non-personnel and personnel. This slide is a picture of our overall budget. You have the details in the budget book, which I know is included in your materials. But this lists all of our cost centers and what the budget has been for each of those cost centers for FY23, 20, and 24. Those are actual. FY25, what was approved last year, and then the recommended for FY26, as well as the change. So you'll see, if you're looking closely, that the total in FY26 at the bottom of this chart is higher than what our budget is. So our budget, we believe, will be $78,173,061, and that number says $79,078,663.36. So that is before we apply some of those recurring revenues and offsets, which we'll get to further on. But we wanted you to see the actual expenses. This is about $825,000 above our appropriation. And as I mentioned, we'll offset that, which we'll come to in a moment. So this is an overall 6% increase over FY25. If you're looking at if you're looking at the cost centers and surprised by the big swings in some of them, for example, if you're looking at Collins Middle School's appropriation, they have the largest increase this year. It's a little misleading, though, because they are absorbing the Saltonstall Middle School. So they are taking staff and students from the Saltonstall Middle School, and that is why their budget looks like it's growing significantly. It's a reflection of that merger. Saltonstall, conversely, looks like it has very large cuts for the same reason. There's also a large cut to the district administration cost center. We made non-personnel cuts there. We made personnel and non-personnel. But the biggest reduction there is last year, we budgeted over $900,000 in a collective bargaining reserve because we hadn't settled our contract. So there was about $1 million in that line last year, which is no longer in that line because we have settled our contract. So that looks like a large cut, but that's what that is. And we'll talk more about non-personnel and personnel in a moment. So I mentioned that our budget starts with enrollment. When we think about state funding, it is important to start here. And if you look closely in the budget book, you'll see different numbers of enrollment. Because when I did the budget book, I looked at both what our actual enrollment was in April when we were putting the budget book together and what our official enrollment was in October. So our enrollment is 3,958 students. That's about a 2% increase over previous years. So we are delighted to report that our enrollment is growing. And we are thrilled by that. We love that students are choosing the public schools and that our enrollment is increasing. It's good news because we can serve more students add to the vibrancy of our community, and because it increases the amount of our Chapter 70 state funding. It is worth noting that among the groups of students that are increasing, our multilingual students are increasing. We now have 768 multilingual students, or about 1 in 5 of our students are multilingual. For special education, we have 942 students who are in a special education program. That's about 1 in 4. And we have seen over the past few years an increase in students with intensive needs and as well as developmental delays. So as our population increases, so does the range of services, supports, programs, and offerings that we want to and need to offer to them. So this is a good news slide, and it offers some context for our budget. So it leads to increased revenue. So our Chapter 70, and these were the House numbers, so the process isn't complete, but when I put this together, these were the House numbers. We're estimating our Chapter 70 will increase by $1.3 million. Our charter reimbursement in the House proposal will also increase over last year, so overall, our state revenue is up by 4.7%. Our local revenue is up by 4.8%, but as the superintendent mentioned, the share that Salem is being held responsible for is growing rapidly and has been doing so for over a decade. I know that you know, but for the record, our budget does not include employee health insurance costs, which are included on the city side. I always think that's important to point out, because in our budget, which is increasing and our expenses are increasing, there's actually a greater city contribution to our budget because of the benefits being on the city side. So that is our revenue. Our expenses are also growing, and this has been part of the challenge, that our expenses are growing just as rapidly, if not more so, as our revenue. We, this year, added 6 new positions to respond to student need. Many of those were required by students' individual education plans in special education, but we do try, as the year unfolds, to make sure we are staffing our schools as our students need. We have seen significant cost increases to our fixed costs and non-personnel. So last year, we talked about how Salem had, I would say, the wisdom and good fortune to be locked into an energy contract with National Grid, but that it expired at the end of the year. And so we negotiated at a very timely moment, a new contract in which our electricity rates were going to increase by about 20% for this year. And that still is saving the city about $630,000 over the life of our contract, just because the actual rates are higher than what we locked into. For this year, our electricity has increased, but for next year, so FY26, our rates will go up by about 30%. Some of that has to do with our high school, which we have very little control over our energy consumption because it's an old building that will soon be replaced. And some of it is a full year of 20% increases. So a large driver to our non-personnel expenses in the coming year is electricity. We're expecting our natural gas to increase by about 10%. And this is after we've done that, as I mentioned, $1.3 million in energy conservation. Transportation is a regular cost driver for us. This year, our regular day transportation is actually decreasing somewhat because we are proposing to go from 13 big buses to 12 big buses as a cost-saving measure. So we are recommending that as a way of reducing our costs. We, so far, have been able to accommodate all requests for transportation at the elementary schools and the middle school, and this year we have a very small waiting list at the high school. And we believe that next year, if we are better able to track ridership, so kids that are routed to a bus and whether they are actually taking it, that even though we expect our wait lists to be longer, we expect there will be a wait list at Collins and we expect there will be a wait list at the high school, we believe that if we're tracking ridership, we can remove kids that aren't riding the bus and work our way through the wait list. So that is the compromise we've made with ourselves around reducing by a bus to save money. However, our transportation costs will continue to increase because we have seen an increase in the number of families experiencing homelessness. This has been a steady increase over the last several years, and the costs for homeless transportation have been offset by state funding, which is ending. So we receive state funding for students who were sheltering at the emergency shelter, and we've been able to carry that money over. But with the shelter being closed, we no longer receive that funding, and so we expect to have a little bit for next year. But for contrast, in FY25, we budgeted $800,000 or so in homeless transportation, and we're likely to spend north of $1.3 million. So that offset has artificially kept our homeless transportation costs lower than they otherwise would be. And lest I forget to mention it, the other area where we're seeing significant increases include our out-of-district placements for students with special needs that are best served by placements outside of the district. So these are students who need intensive services. I would note that we actually are not estimating a large increase in the number of students going out of district. A large part of that is due to the fact that we have increased the number of programs inside the Salem Public Schools. I actually don't have the numbers right in front of me, but the scale will be right, and I will confirm the actual numbers with you. But about 5 years ago, we had 5 or 6 in-district programs, and now we have north of 20. So we are doing our best to keep students in the district as best we can. There are students who need to be served outside of the district, and in those instances, the tuitions are increasing significantly because collaboratives and private placements are experiencing the same kind of cost pressures that we are. So I didn't want to not mention that as a rising expense, our out-of-district placements. And I am coming to the end, but just so you can see how this breaks down, as the superintendent mentioned, 76% of our budget is people. This is a people business. 24% is non-personnel. So this This already assumes $3.5 million in position reductions. So when I mentioned the 57 positions, that is the savings. This is after those positions have been cut. So I mentioned that we're still about $825,000 over. This is how we're going to get to the number, to our budget number. We are going to prepay our special ed tuition, so we're allowed to prepay using money from this year for next year. We anticipate moving staff onto grants. I would note that this budget does not address the potential loss of federal money. This assumes status quo, so that could change, but we didn't know exactly how to predict for that, so we have assumed that that will not change dramatically. So between grants and prepayment of tuition, including and revolving revenue, that is how we believe we will cut the last $825,000 to get us into balance. So that is how we got there, and just the last two slides show how the budget breaks down. This is a pie chart version of the table that I showed you at the top with our different cost centers and the size of those. So as you can see, Salem High School is our largest cost center and our largest budget within our budget. Special education is our second largest, and I believe Collins Middle School is our third. This breakdown looks very similar to what it looked like last year. So when we look on the last slide at how does this break down if we just look at schools, of the money being invested in the schools, 28% goes to the high school, 16% to Collins, and 10% to Witchcraft. This tracks very closely to the size of the schools, so was not surprising. And if you have last year's budget book, or if you would like to see it, this chart looks very similar to last year's chart. So roughly the allocations are very similar, and that is because we try to be equitable when we make cuts or new funding decisions. So those are the slides that we have for you this evening. We're happy to take questions or have a conversation or follow any line of questioning that you are curious about. Thank you.
Well, thank you for an incredible presentation, and of course, thank you to your educators and your school staff and all of you for the incredible work that you do. Our appreciation can't be overstated, and this was a really thoughtful, thorough presentation tonight, and it's very much appreciated. Thank you. Councillor Cohen?
Thank you, Chair Merkel, not being a member of the committee. I have a comment and then a couple of questions. Energy efficiency. So just like your budget's very similar, I'm going to say almost exactly what I did for the last 3 years. I'm really disappointed in the solar arrays on the Collins and Saltonstall schools. They are PPAs, which are leases. We're only discounted a percentage, which is probably around 10%. It's actually consumed almost 100% or 200% by the increase in cost from National Grid. We do own the arrays on the Witchcraft and Bentley School, so we realize 100% of the electricity, which I believe is about $650,000 on average per year. And in addition to that, we receive about $1 million over 10 years in rebates. So I'm just encouraging the school that the next time you decide to throw solar panels on a school property, that we avoid a program that only benefits the company that put them on there. The other thing that I want to mention as far as energy efficiency is that gas went up 10%. It's probably going to go up a lot more in the future. And the quicker we convert to heat pumps, not only the better it will be as far as cost savings, but they're healthier for the children and the staff. Now, I have some good news. The Senate budget was just approved, and in it, a key factor is, now I know they have to go through conference and iron out all their stuff, but it says that The Chapter 70 funding for schools would increase $460 million to $7.3 billion, fully funding the Student Opportunities Act, which I think has been a considerable issue that we've all talked about for years. And so I know that you don't have the answer now, but I'm assuming if there's some compromise between the rather conservative House allocation and the Senate, do you think that could potentially increase what you estimate for the allotment that we're getting?
So the allocations in the Senate budget, it still would provide the same amount of Chapter 70 to Salem because we are in foundation aid, and so the formula calculation will be the same, whether it was the governor's allocation, the House allocation, or the Senate allocation. Where the House and Senate, I think, may differ. I haven't had a chance to peel away the layers of the proposals, is that sometimes what they do is they toggle, there's the minimum aid component of the formula that Salem was in a couple of years ago, and so if we had still been in minimum aid, we may have seen more, but it's much more beneficial for us to be in Chapter 70, in foundation aid. One thing they did include, Senator Lewis represents Malden among some other communities. Malden's had a similar experience to Salem with some frustrations with Chapter 70. They included an appropriation for some money for a study to look at some of the issues that we've been seeing with the Chapter 70 formula. So that is an area, and Senator Lovely also co-sponsored that amendment, and it passed. So it is now with the conference committee, and so would definitely recommend maybe some advocacy on that, because if that lands in front of the governor and she signs that, it's basically paying for a study to look at all of the issues that we've been raising. Their deadline is to file something by June 30th, 2026, so it looks like it's an FY27 conversation, which is also when the sort of last year of the Student Opportunity Act runs out. So I just wanted to flag that there is potentially some movement there that could be useful to the issues we've been seeing.
Thank you. Maybe I got a little too excited, but maybe the Senate is moving in a better direction than the House is. I just have one other comment, which I think is really a tribute to, your staff and the school committee for negotiating with the Salem Teachers Union over the summer and signing a really tremendous contract. And I do believe that over time, the benefit to the students and families in Salem, it will be significant because you'll have more retention of teachers. I think it will mean that Salem will continue to have a really high level of quality of teachers, and this will, I think, positively impact the students and maybe increase attendance. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, agreed with that. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel, and thank you, Dr. Streich and Ms. Polly, for your presentation, one of my favorites every year. I'll be fairly quick because I've been paying attention as this has gone through the school committee and the public process, which that's kind of my first comment, is I really appreciate the thorough public process and input that is taken in creating this budget. Really a long-term, thoughtful impact, which is needed, because it's, what, 30 over how much percentage of our overall budget? I should know that number because I just said it, but it's high, right? It's the largest proportion of our city budget, so appreciate the efforts and the thoughtful research that's done into it. I had one quick question about the SALTs and CMS impact for budget, but actually one of your slides did note on it, so it looked like it was almost somewhat even for budget line items with personnel moving and all of that, but I was curious if there's any impact with the schooling, the actual school building itself. I'm assuming SALTs might now have some additional space within there. Are utility costs staying flat, or is there any plans there or alternative uses for the SALT building as well?
I don't think for next year we're going to see a ton of savings from the building, but as the school committee has been pretty transparent about, we're about to enter in some discussions about extra space around the district and whether there needs to be some consolidations. potentially the closing of a building, because, and there's where you would realize some significant savings. We do have, we will have substantial space at Saltonstall next year. We will have space at Witchcraft, and we do lease out space at Horace Mann for the Head Start Pathways program that we need to, that the school committee has asked for us to begin looking into. I will point out there is a retreat on June 21st where the school committee will be discussing this, and they have asked, Elizabeth and I were just talking about this today, for us to pull the leases that we have right now for outside organizations that utilize the space in our buildings so that we can look at what our utilization and efficiency is. So I think the short answer is, like, we're not going to see a lot of savings next year, but I would think that based on what the school committee has asked us to do, that they are going to look to see where we can realize future savings, in how we better utilize our buildings, because right now we are running quite a few buildings for the number of kids. Even though our enrollment has gone up, many districts that have many more students than we do are running much fewer buildings than we are. And so that's something we need to look at, which will help us down the road if we're not having to run as many school buildings as we currently are now. So short term, no, but I think long term there is plans to look at all of that.
Great, thank you. And if I may, I think that was good terminology used on building and not programs.
That's right.
Yeah. So I would just point that out and appreciate the public conversation that will happen around that, because that will, I would imagine, a very robust, long public conversation, so which I know would take care of. And then my last question about the actual building, I'm very excited for the high school building project and the high school utility costs. I feel like that was, it was mentioned during the presentation, but the utility costs, is it something like 30% of citywide utilities, or
Closer to a quarter.
a 0.25% of all utilities for the city are taken up by the high school? That number is just, when I heard that the first time, is drastic. So any savings there would be amazing. And then now an actual question for me. One of the items noted were the reductions in staff, but 24 of them were noted as being retirees or vacant positions, which at first glance you're like, oh, because there's not a person associated to it, so it's a little easier it feels a little better. But I'm always concerned about that. Like, are those needed positions? Like, will we be needing them back next year? How are those conversations going through, or their feeling around not? Just because a position was vacant doesn't mean it's not, a needed position.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be hard pressed to say all the positions are needed. I mean, everything helps our, kids. I will say that right now the decisions that we've made are not, the eliminations of roles are not, I think, going to alter our direction as a district or the outcomes or the experiences of kids. I do think that if we have another budget season like this, then we will be in a very tough position. And that's what I worry about. I'm not saying, I obviously don't want to lose any of the positions we have. We haven't completely right-sized from even before the pandemic because our enrollment had dropped. Even though it's gone up quite a bit at the high school level, at the elementary level and the middle school level, it has declined overall since 10 years ago. And we didn't totally right-size. And then we went into the pandemic. We weren't going to cut staff. At that point, we in fact added some that we now have had to eliminate from the COVID relief dollars that we received. So, I don't enter next year with tremendous concern for our ability to serve kids. I do worry that if we have another $5 million deficit for next year and the year after, that starts to really make it hard to continue the programs that I think are signature experiences, and I really don't want our kids to suffer from that. So Yeah, I don't feel good about any loss of roles, but I'm confident that we can continue to move forward and have some of the success we've had over the last few years for next year. But yeah, I'm worried down the road, and I think the school committee is, and that's why we're really looking at other ways. I mean, the city can only do so much. I think the city of Salem has been very generous to us. I'm not worried about the level of contribution. I'm worried more about what the state economic climate is, about how Chapter 70 is designed. I mean, there's more lobbying that I need to do, we need to do, our elected officials need to do, because I still think we're getting shortchanged. The long-term picture is what has me more worried than next school year.
Thank you. Councilor Stott. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I just have one question for Elizabeth. You had mentioned earlier that the ability to pay ahead for the special education costs, so pulling out of this year's budget to pay towards next. Is that a cascading plan, or do we now face a larger jump next year for fiscal 27?
It is a common practice that we have, so this is my third budget, and we have done this every year, and for some indeterminate number of years before that. So yes, it is a cascading problem, and it is not a new strategy. What we are doing is any unspent funds at this point in the year, we're sweeping them back to try to say we will pay as much as we possibly can to prepay tuition for our students. And we have high hopes for circuit breaker to offset some of this prepayment. Since we're talking about special education, could I correct something that I said? I said we had 6 programs, and now we have 19. Actually, we had 19, and now we have 31. And that's on page 59 of the budget book, in case you want to take a deeper dive. So apologies for getting the numbers wrong.
Sorry, Elizabeth, what were those again?
So we had, in 2018, 19 in-district programs for students with special education needs, and now we have 31. And that is page 59 of the budget book.
Thank you. Sorry, I do have one more question, just kind of tacking on to what Councilor Stott was saying before about the needed roles, and though I think the sentiment is really clear, is there a rundown of what roles, all in one place in this that I just haven't seen, of which roles have been identified for cutting?
There are the specific roles that we are planning to reduce are on pages 29 and 30 of our budget book. The header is position reductions. What that will do is show you the specific positions, but it won't show you, for example, I happen to know this one, at New Liberty, there's a reduction of a 0.5 multilingual teacher. So to the question that Councilor Stott answered, that is a position that has been vacant all year this year, and so we believe we can live without it. So that's why we have cut that position. This chart doesn't say who's retiring, where the vacancies are.
Yeah.
I don't believe we have broken that down in the budget book.
Is it safe to say that no one has lost a job and is walking away from the SPS?
I think that is not yet safe to say.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. I'm just trying to, for the public.
Not safe to say. Most of the people, I think, we have a number of people who aren't properly certified for their roles. They have to reapply every year. If they were on a waiver, they're not necessarily guaranteed a position, but no professional status educator who's in good standing is walking away from the Salem Public Schools. I can say that.
Excellent, thank you, Dr. Strike.
Just to clarify my response, we have a variety of roles that now are shaking out. So it depends if people whose positions have been reduced will be interested in those other jobs.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Counselor Rosillo?
Thank you, Chair. How often do you go out to bid for the transportation service?
Talking about that today.
Our contract with NRT is, and this coming year is the 5th and final year of our current contract. So we will need to go out to bid in FY26 for our regular day transportation. We also have a separate contract for our transportation for students experiencing homelessness. I think the last time we went out was 2 years ago, but we will need to go out again in FY26.
And what about the special education students?
So for the out-of-district special education transportation, we actually are part of the SEAM Collaborative's regional transportation contract. So SEAM went out to bid last year. They hadn't gone out to bid in 10 years. So we have seen our out-of-district special education transportation rates go up because we were paying very old rates through SEAM. I think their contract is 5 years, so we won't need to go out to bid for several more years out there.
So for the regular day transportation, is there much competition in that space?
Fortunately not enough. I'm pleased that we're not running our own transportation because it's really hard for districts to do. We were burning through drivers, and especially post-COVID, I'm very pleased. The challenge is, there isn't a lot of competition. That's a whole nother discussion. That's something that has been discussed at the state level. We'd like to see more bids come out so that there's better pricing, better service, and so unfortunately not. And I'd rather not get into the details of all that, but that's historically, not just Salem, but when other districts go out to bid, there aren't a lot of people that bid. It's typically the provider you have.
So as part of your discussion in June, when you talk about the school buildings, is that also going to take into account the whole neighborhood school concept? And
yes, the school committee is very interested in just, you can just ask the question and see what kind of reaction you get from them. They're very interested in exploring the school choice, inter-district choice. And seeing the pros. I mean, there are definitely pros and cons of it, but they are very interested in exploring. I think the first conversation will be about the building utilization, and then they want to begin talking about. We're going to need some help to study it. I think there's definitely an appetite on the part of the school committee to look at it. It certainly drives our transportation costs way up. As all of you know, we have 5 different buses stopping at the same stop for 5 different schools every morning in multiple spots in the city, and that obviously is super costly. And many communities around us don't spend any money on transportation, other than for special education transportation, because you're required to transport students to programs in other schools. So it's definitely a cost driver for us. On the flip side, right, we have some of the most diverse schools in the state of Massachusetts. And so I think that's it's important. I mean, I believe that makes for the best schools anywhere when you have that level of diversity. So we're going to have to study this very carefully.
thank you.
Okay, any questions from any of the counselors? No? Okay, again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the information. Counselor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I move that we I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval of the school department budget of $78,173,061.
Second it.
Counselor Stott moves to recommend approval of the total appropriation for the Salem Public Schools in the amount of $78,173,061. Seconded by Counselor Harvey. All in favor? Okay, let the record show. I see 3 hands plus my own. The matter carries unanimously. Okay, and now we will move on to the CIP, tab number 7, the larger tabs in the front, and that is page 231 and 232. And also, these are the 5-year capital plan, all funds, and this is something we will be voting on, all the funding sources that require a council vote on June 11th. Would you like to offer any comments on anything, or just go right to questions from the council?
If the council has a preference, we can do it either way. We did not prepare slides on our CIP request. Okay. But I'm happy to provide a little context if that's helpful for each of.
That would be great. Thank you.
So on page 232, I'm looking at capital requests that begin with the gym floor replacement. And that is a request to replace the Horace Mann gym floor. We have a number of gym floor needs, including there is a robust conversation about the gym floor at the high school. However, at Horace Mann, they have a rubber gym floor that is in disrepair and is estimated to be one of the worst in our elementary schools, although there are several in need of repair. And so we requested a replacement for the Horace Mann gym floor, which will allow both for a better experience for kids, and we can also then rent that space out as needed. So that is the gym floor replacement. It is for the Horace Mann School. The next request is painting for school buildings. This is not a new request for us per se, but one that has not been a regular ask of this size. A number of our school buildings, including Horace Mann and Saltonstall, are in need of being entirely repainted over the summer. And while every summer we do what we can to repair the buildings between summer programmings and the length of the summer, we generally don't have the capacity to repaint all buildings every summer and make them fresh and clean for the students. So we have requested $250,000, which we believe will allow us to repaint Horace Mann and Saltonstall. We'd like to develop a rotation of schools that are painted every summer. The next ask for playgrounds and outdoor spaces. Last year, we had anticipated that this ask would be for the Horace Mann playground, which in 2022, the district commissioned a playground report that looked at the safety and usage of all of our playgrounds, and the Horace Mann would be next up in our playground rotation. So first was Witchcraft, then the Bates Early Childhood, then the Horace Mann Early Childhood Playground. However, in the interim, Bertram Field, which is what this request is for, and the track have been noted to be in significant disrepair. There are holes in the track surfacing, and there's work that needs to be done in the locker room buildings. So this is primarily track repair, and I think it's lighting, actually, in the building. That's what I think that is. The next is a roof replacement request we applied for, and actually I think we talked about this last spring because City Council had to approve us actually submitting an application to MSBA for the accelerated repair program for a new roof at the Bates Elementary School. We were selected into the program. So this is what we have estimated will be our cost after the MSBA reimbursement. So that is roof replacements and repairs, $988,000. That is for the new Bates roof, our portion after the MSBA reimbursement. The next two are regular requests, although these are large requests. These are regular requests for us: school electrical, plumbing, and HVAC. We're proposing to replace the Collins Middle School controls, repair chillers, especially at Carlton, where last summer we did see significant failure of the Carlton HVAC system, and we did at the time have summer programs running, and so it was not safe in that building. This $750,000 will support the controls, the repairs of chillers, and and then ongoing plumbing work that we do every summer in all of our buildings. Sorry, my notes from security and life safety were running into this column. So that is the $750,000. For security and life safety, that will be elevator repairs, fire and sprinkler repairs, so the fireboxes and sprinklers, access controls for main offices, replacement vape detectors, and replacement cameras. And technology, that $550,000 is $500,000 for replacing student and staff Chromebooks, whiteboards and smartboards in buildings, as well as projectors, and $50,000 for replacement devices for our special ed department. And that, I think I have left off the generators. Oh, on the previous page, I skipped that. I skipped the generators. That is for Bates Elementary School. The generators, that generator is in need of replacement. It is our oldest generator. We had hoped to replace it in FY '25, but the quotes came in at significantly higher levels because of the way the generator is constructed. It's inside the building, so we have to somehow get it out of the building and build a way to have it outside. So the Bates generator had been our priority for this year, and we have postponed it to next year. So that is the generator request.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilor Rosillo?
Thank you, Chair. Bertram Field, was this an expected expense?
The size of the cost for replacing the track was a little bit of a surprise to us. We do have an outdoor space. We were surprised to know that it would be so much to repair the holes in the track.
So is this expected every couple of years? It was brand new, like it's,
I don't think the track was brand new when they did.
can you speak into the?
I don't think they redid the track when they did the facility. So those tracks have, I think, a life of 10 years. Sorry about that. I forget what the life is of the track, but I think the track was not done when they did the renovation of the building and the grounds. So the track, that is not unexpected.
Okay.
The track would need to be replaced, or it doesn't need to be totally replaced. There does need to be repairs to the track.
The cost is what was a surprise to us, that it was that significant. So there are 14 open spaces along the track, along with 5 grates that separate the track and the field.
And then you said something about lights in the locker room?
Yes, it's actually, the sound system has failed. It is not lights. It is the sound system that has failed. We have rented one for the past several years.
There was no new component with the new building?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Not part of the
No.
project.
No.
It was the
Okay.
old, that was the old.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Cohen?
Thank you, Chair Merkel, not being a member of the committee. I'm not going to be here for the fiscal 2027 budget, but you have Witchcraft boiler replacement, $1 million. And just want to remind everyone here that we have a green building ordinance that was passed for municipal properties, all municipal properties, in January of 2022. So that boiler should be replaced by a heat pump, which I'm really grateful to see you nodding your head, which will save you all a lot of money going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the council? Okay, great. Well, thank you all again for being here tonight and for all the information. Any other last comments?
I would just say, I'm just very appreciative of the city council for your support of the schools. It's been a pleasure working with this group who I know cares deeply about the needs of children. And so it's not like that everywhere. I've been in other places, and I'm just very appreciative to work with all of you. And I know your investment and interest in what we do. I'm happy to come back to do a state of the schools when it's convenient for all of you. So just please, reach out or have Councilor Prasnewski reach out to me. I'd love to come and share all the good things that are happening across the schools. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Yes, I've appreciated seeing that, the partnership is between the city and the schools, the focus on compensating our educators and just all the priorities that you laid out were really, really top-notch. Thank you. I'll entertain another motion. Councilor Stott motions to adjourn, seconded by Councilor Watson-Felt. All in favor? Great, thank you. Good night, everyone.